there's only so many notes and so many chords and so many ways to use them. And I like rock and roll, I like country, I like classical music, I like all kind of music.
What if the most legendary rebel in country music wasn't just fighting the system, but battling his own circle? For decades, the world saw Willie Nelson as a smiling outlaw with a guitar named Trigger and a heart full of songs. Willie Nelson, one of country music's most beloved icons, has long been known for his peace-loving persona and collaborative spirit. However, a closer look at his career reveals that even this laid-back legend has experienced a share of tensions and quiet feuds with fellow artists. In a recent revealing interview, Nelson opened up about some of the behind-the-scenes conflicts that have shaped his journey. Among the most notable was his ideological clash with Hank Williams Jr., who often criticized Willie's countercultural image and support for marijuana, contrasting it with his own traditional Southern values. While Hank Jr. fired off barbed comments, Willie responded with grace, preaching tolerance and mutual respect. Another subtle rivalry brewed between Willie and Glen Campbell, whose polished mainstream success stood in contrast to Nelson's raw outlaw style. Though never openly hostile, Campbell's occasional jabs about image over talent hinted at his discomfort with the changing tides of country music. A more surprising moment came with Julio Iglesias, Willie's duet partner on the hit To All the Girls I've Loved Before. After their success, Willie felt personally slighted when Iglesias appeared dismissive at a public event, ending any future collaborations. Neil Young, too, once caused a stir by criticizing Nelson's guitar playing, a jab that hurt but didn't provoke retaliation. Willie stayed true to his belief in playing from the heart, letting his unique style speak for itself. Even close friendships weren't without friction. Willie and Waylon Jennings, while famously tight, often argued over music and direction, like an old married couple, yet always found their way back to mutual respect. A bizarre incident with mentor Ray Price involved Nelson shooting a prize rooster at Price's wife's request, sparking brief outrage before the two reconciled. A newer clash involved Ed Sheeran, when Nelson's camp accused him of copying an unreleased song's themes. Though tensions escalated briefly, both artists resolved the matter privately and peacefully. Despite widespread rumors, Willie's partnership with Merle Haggard remained strong, built on shared outlaw roots and musical brotherhood. His friendship with Johnny Cash, however, hit a bump over a song-related misunderstanding, which was eventually resolved, leading to their iconic collaboration in The Highwayman. Lastly, Nelson's well-known feud with the IRS became a legendary chapter in his career. Hit with a $16.7 million tax bill, he responded not with defeat, but with an album, the IRS tapes, to help pay down the debt. Throughout all these moments, whether facing critics, misunderstandings, or legal woes, Willie Nelson's humility, resilience, and dedication to music allowed him to emerge not bitter, but wiser and even more beloved. Willie Nelson is celebrated as country music's gentle outlaw, a philosopher in a bandana, a mellow soul who has always embraced peace, freedom, and artistic integrity. But beneath his easygoing exterior lies a complex history of rivalries, misunderstood intentions, and cultural clashes with some of the most prominent figures in music history. When asked recently about singers he secretly couldn't stand, Nelson didn't lash out with invective. Instead, his reflections revealed a man shaped by confrontation, compromise, and the grittier side of fame. One of the most enduring tensions was with Hank Williams Jr., a staunch defender of traditional country values. Williams, deeply steeped in Southern heritage, took frequent jabs at Nelson's emergence during the outlaw movement of the 1970s. His long hair, bandanas, and vocal support for marijuana legalization became symbolic of a wider shift Hank Jr. distrusted. In interviews, Williams mocked Nelson's appearances and ideology, even equating them with hippie culture infringing on country's culture. Rather than retaliate, Nelson defended individualism, asserting that country music could and should embrace a broader spectrum of voices, styles, and lifestyles. His response, "We all walk our own path," embodied acceptance over confrontation. Another quiet rivalry simmered between Willie and Glen Campbell. Campbell, with his charm and polished mainstream image, represented the Nashville establishment Nelson rejected. Though never publicly hostile, Campbell's subtle criticism, that image often overshadowed musicianship, betrayed a deeper frustration over the shift in country's cultural axis. Willie never offered retaliation. He recognized the clash as emblematic of a broader stylistic shift and continued his pursuit of authenticity. Then there was Julio Iglesias, unlikely duet partner turned source of disappointment. After their worldwide smash to All the Girls I've Loved Before, the two shared commercial triumph. But a high-profile event after the release, Iglesias allegedly ignored or snubbed Nelson. Willie was hurt, not by critique, but by perceived disrespect. He disengaged quietly, shelving future collaborative plans. There was no scandal, no tabloid feud, just a broken sense of mutual appreciation. Neil Young's criticism struck a more personal chord. Young, known for blunt musical critiques, once described Nelson's guitar playing as simplistic, an apparent slight to the artistry behind Trigger, the beat-up Martin guitar at the heart of Willie's sound. Nelson's style, jazz-influenced finger-picking, unorthodox timing, has drawn both admiration and scrutiny. Nelson's response was classic. He shrugged it off, affirming his philosophy. "I've always played from the heart." The moment passed without escalating. But it also reminded audiences that even open-hearted rebels can be wounded by artistic criticism. Perhaps one of the most famous relationships tinged with tension was Nelson's bond with Waylon Jennings. These two outlaws, collaborators, and friends share brotherhood, fuel, and ideological kinship. Together, they forged groundbreaking works like Wanted. The Outlaws, combining long hair, bandanas, and a fearless rejection of Nashville's polished sheen. But like old married couples, they argued. Creative choices, drug use, and the sparks of ego threatened their bond. But the friction, in time, enriched it. Waylon said of their friendship and its ups and downs, "We're friends, we fight. When we was on different kinds of drugs, we would fight. Yet through it all, I love Willie. He's like my brother the road." A far more bizarre clash involved Ray Price, a mentor-turned-friend. In the 1950s, Price hired Willie as a bassist for his Cherokee Cowboys band, deeply influencing Willie's craft. Years later, Price's prized rooster turned raucous troublemaker. At Mrs. Price's request, Willie handled the problem, shooting the rooster, thinking it was a chore more than a symbol of disregard. When Price discovered the deed, he was furious enough to stop playing Willie's songs. But the rupture didn't last. Time, intelligence, and loyalty prevailed, culminating in Nelson's posthumous tribute to Price in 2016, a musical apology embodying his long-standing affection. Even generational boundary crossing brought friction. After collaborating with Ed Sheeran, rumors swirled that Sheeran's tracks shared haunting themes with an unreleased Nelson song. Willie's team accused Sheeran of overborrowing. Sheeran insisted it was coincidental. Legal threats brewed, fan debate flared, but ultimately, the two resolved things privately and publicly reconciled with respect and humility. In contrast, his relationship with Merle Haggard was nearly frictionless. Haggard and Nelson, kindred spirits of the outlaw country movement, recorded their 1983 joint album Poncho and Lefty, which topped the country charts and symbolized musical empathy. There were whispers of backstage tension, but no evidence of a feud. Their mutual reverence shone brighter than any momentary irritation. Haggard once lauded Nelson, "The Party's Over," as one of the most affecting songs he'd ever heard, affirming their unspoken bond. Johnny Cash's friendship was also tested. In the 1980s, Cash believed Nelson had promised him a song, only to see Willie record and release it himself. Hurt followed, and the two men kept their distance at times. Yet once they talked it through, their bond deepened. They went on to form the Highwaymen along with Jennings and Chris Christopherson, a supergroup built on mutual forgiveness and camaraderie. Willie's most public battle, however, was with the IRS. In 1990, he was hit with a staggering $16.7 million tax bill, a result of unpaid back taxes and bad financial advice, including ill-fated tax shelters orchestrated by Price Waterhouse. The IRS seized his ranch, studio, and prized possessions. Facing ruin, Willie released the IRS tapes. Who'll Buy My Memories, a double album of stripped-down renditions of his classics, sold directly to fans to raise money for his debt. He sued Price Waterhouse for mismanagement. The case settled. By 1993, he'd reached agreement with the IRS for a reduced $9 million debt and paid it off with continued touring and music revenues. Rather than breaking him, the ordeal reinforced his outlaw legend. Beyond these most famous examples, other tensions arose, such as criticism from academic traditionalists or Nashville purists who found Nelson's liberal politics and genre blending distasteful. Some celebrated how he kissed Charlie Pride on stage during era of segregation or supported LGBTQ rights, acts that disturbed conservative fans. Yet top lines of disdain from critics never shook Nelson's belief in artistic and political freedom. What holds all these stories together is a portrait of Willie Nelson as a man propelled by integrity, not ego, resilience, not rage. When confronted with criticism, snubs, or betrayal, he never stooped to revenge. He defended himself with grace, music, or laughter, not lawsuits or scandals. His revolts were for autonomy. His confrontations, when they came, were rarely about domination. In each case, conflict became growth. Ideological battles with Williams Jr. highlighted country's shifting identity. Rivalry with Campbell and Young underscored the tension between image and soul. The Iglesias and Cash moments showed that respect matters as much as rhythm. The IRS war cemented his outlaw status as one who fights monumental odds by picking up a guitar rather than a gun. Even in the strangest situations, shooting Price's rooster, Willie navigated reconciliations, not regrets. No less important is what he learned. Artistic disagreements can deepen respect. Disappointments can lead to closure. Financial calamity can become a creative opportunity. His life's narrative affirms that we're defined more by how we respond than by what we face. So when Willie Nelson revealed, "I respect anyone who stays true," he wasn't just preaching tolerance. He was explaining himself. Those he secretly couldn't stand weren't villains. They were fellow travelers on a messy, beautiful trail where integrity collided with image, tradition wrestled with rebellion, and friendship was tested by fame. Whether it was ideological feuding with Williams Jr., Elliott running with Jennings, or a late-life handshake with Sheeran, Nelson emerged time and again unbroken, his voice softer, his philosophy deeper, his legend more complex. Even notorious moments from history took on surprising nuance with Willie. Take his very public IRS saga. In 1990, he faced a $16.7 million tax liability. The agency seized his ranch, studio memorabilia, and even his beloved guitar, Trigger. But Willie didn't retreat. He recorded and self-released the IRS tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories, with proceeds going straight to the IRS. That album became a cultural statement. Not defiance born of anger, but protest dressed in song. With tongue-in-cheek encouraging voice, he reclaimed his story. He later sued Price Waterhouse for bad financial advice, settling privately. By 1993, he'd carved the debt down to around $9 million, paid off through relentless touring and hard-won sales. The moment became a foundational chapter in his outlaw legacy. Not just a sinner, but a survivor who'd rewrite the script of his own ruin. A moment both strange and emblematic was a rooster incident involving Ray Price. Price, an elder mentor who brought Willie into the Cherokee Cowboys in the late 1950s, prized a rooster that became aggressive. At Price's wife's behest, Willie took care of it himself by shooting the bird. Price, in betrayal, vowed never again to sing one of Nelson's compositions. For a time, the hurt ran deep, yet the rupture healed. Nelson later honored Price with a tribute album in 2016, almost 60 years after he first joined his band, transforming the bizarre dispute into a gesture of enduring loyalty. Not every rivalry was built on heritage. Some were sparked by miscommunication. Johnny Cash, Willie's brother-in-arms since the 1960s, once thought Willie had promised him a song, but Willie recorded it first. Cash hurt, cooled toward the situation, and for a time the duo drifted. But with characteristic honesty, they hashed things out. That fracture would heal and ultimately lead to the formation of the Highwaymen, Cash, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, and Nelson, proving that friendships in their world were elastic, not brittle. When it came to public perception, Willie's image, long hair, bandanas, and marijuana advocacy, became a cultural lightning rod. He once lit up a joint on the White House lawn with President Jimmy Carter's approval, recalling the surreal scene as turning inward. But for more conventional country stars like Hank Williams Jr., an unapologetic traditionalist, Willie represented everything wrong with modern music. Hank mocked Willie's hippie vibe and pot use as antithetical to the country tradition. Willie shrugged off the critiques. "We all walk our own path," he said, reiterating an early refrain. Behind the scene, however, he confessed feeling misunderstood and unmoored in a genre that increasingly rewarded image over substance. Less ideological but equally telling was a studio room awkwardness with Julio Iglesias. Their 1984 hit, "To All the Girls I've Loved Before," was a smash, number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 1 in country, and Iglesias' breakout into English-language markets. But in the studio, Willie wasn't impressed with Julio's unlimited English. He reportedly paused the session wondering, "This guy doesn't speak English?" Others say Iglesias rejected Willie's voice on tape, tossing out the initial demo as murder. The footage of their eventual performance, Willie in tennis shoes and braids, Julio in full tuxedo, dazzles fans now. But beneath the smiles was tension. Willie felt the need to assert authenticity across cultural divides, even as they created something timeless. Music critics and Elvis-style purists also occasionally targeted Willie. Neil Young, another hero of genre, breaking, once commented that Nelson's guitar work was simplistic, perhaps lacking polish. Willie, hard on sleeve, admitted being wounded, but didn't respond with bitterness. "I play from the heart," he said, reaffirming his style. Folk, country, blues, jazz, layered, flawed, soulful. It was a moment that illuminated the tension between raw emotional impact and technical precision, a gap Willie crossed willingly. In 2015, social media attached labels, hippie weirdo, conspiracy theorist, to Willie. His 2024 remarks, which included nods to alternative ideas, divided audiences. Some condemned him. Others defended him as never a bigot, just a weirdo who wants peace. Even Willie's critics conceded that beneath the odd beliefs lay a steady moral center. As Willie Nelson's career stretched across decades, a quiet but recurring source of friction emerged, not from fellow artists or industry suits, but from within his own family. Willie has always held a deep loyalty to his children, many of whom have followed him into music. His sons Lucas and Micah, for example, have carved their own sonic paths, often echoing their father's outlaw roots. But those father-son dynamics were not always easy. In interviews, Lucas has spoken candidly about the challenge of living in his father's shadow, wrestling with public expectations and inherited fame. Willie, for his part, tried to give his children freedom while also involving them in his work, inviting them on tour, on stage, and even into his band. That closeness sometimes brought unspoken tensions. A 2017 documentary on the Nelson family hinted at unresolved disagreements over management decisions, money, and the legacy of the Nelson name. Still, the family remained close-knit, proving that their loyalty outlasted even the most fraught moments. One of the more mysterious and private relationships in Willie's life was with Waylon Jennings, his most iconic co-conspirator in the outlaw country movement, while they were seen as best friends. Touring together, recording Wanted, The Outlaws, and forming the Highwaymen, their relationship was filled with friction behind the scenes. Waylon struggled with severe drug addiction through much of the 1970s and 80s, and Willie often acted as his emotional anchor, yet even that took a toll. In Waylon's own autobiography, he described moments where he resented Willie's calm, zen-like approach to life. "Sometimes I wanted to punch him just for smiling all the damn time," Waylon wrote, but it was always said with love. Willie, too, admitted in interviews that there were times we needed space. Theirs was a friendship forged in music, but tempered by time, egos, and the pressures of fame. Still, the love endured. After Waylon's death in 2002, Willie openly wept during tribute performances, never shying from the grief of losing his friend. In the late 2000s, Willie's activism caused ripples even among his own fan base. A lifelong advocate for marijuana legalization and environmental causes, he increasingly spoke out on climate change, animal rights, and LGBTQ+ equality, stances that drew criticism from more conservative country fans. His endorsement of progressive political candidates, including Beto O'Rourke in Texas, led to backlash and boycotts. Some longtime fans called him a traitor to traditional values. But Willie refused a waiver. "I didn't come here to be quiet," he told Rolling Stone in 2019. "I came here to be honest." His activism cost him record sales at times, but won him a new, younger following who admired his moral consistency. Willie remained unconcerned about the loss support. If I lose a few people along the way, I reckon I wasn't meant to keep him. Even his most faithful collaborator, Trigger, his beat-up Martin and 20 guitar, came with its own share of symbolic tension. The guitar, which has followed him since 1969, is so worn that its body has a gaping hole beneath the strings. Fans revere it, and it's insured for millions. But for Willie, it is not a relic, but a partner. In 1991, when the IRS raided his home, he had Trigger with a friend to keep it from being seized. "If I lose Trigger," he once said, "I'll quit." The threat wasn't financial, it was emotional. Trigger represented every tour, every trial, every song. Willie's attachment to the guitar was a quiet rebellion against the music industry's focus on pristine appearances and marketability. His refusal to retire, it was a gesture of stubborn authenticity. Another kind of conflict, one not with a person, but with a system. At this glimpse into Willie's world hit you like it hit us. Go ahead and tap that like button, drop a comment with your favorite Willie moment, and subscribe, because we got more untold stories on the way.